As of version 19, DaVinci Resolve finally supports Ambisonics up to 5th order. In this video, we're going to explore all the possible workflows and all the doors it can open to you. My name is Alejandro and we are the Audio Brewers. Let's talk about which Ambisonics order you should use. My recommendation is to always use the highest order your DAW allows you to use, and that is because the Ambisonics technology is additive, meaning that a 5th order ambisonic signal already contains the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st order signal. So it's very easy to go down. Whereas if you worked in 1st order ambisonics and afterwards you, for example, wanted to do a mix for 5th order ambisonics or for a lot of channels, it's going to be much harder to upmix this signal to 5th order. So stick to whatever the highest is in your DAW, and in DaVinci Resolve, that is 5th order ambisonics. So let's get Resolve ready, as by default, Ambisonics comes disabled. So the first thing what we're going to do is to go to our preferences, and in video and audio I/O, if you scroll down to the immersive audio part, you will see the tick box to enable Ambisonics. All you have to do is tick this box and press on save, and that's it. Ambisonics now works in Resolve. The second thing that I suggest doing, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to, is to enable the Ambisonics metering. And that is by going to the Fairlight menu, and in immersive audio, you enable Ambisonics channel metering. By enabling this, you will be able to meter each of the Ambisonics channels. And when it comes to 5th order Ambisonics, you have 36 channels, and you will be able to meter the 36 channels as opposed to just one channel for all your signal. And I just personally like this better. Okay, now let's create our timeline and set our outputs. The first thing that I'm going to do is just to create an empty timeline. I'm gonna call it Ambisonics. And as you can see, as usual, DaVinci has created an audio track and a bus, which is my master bus. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to create an extra bus, which is going to be my Ambisonics monitoring. And to do that, I have to go to Fairlight and bus formats. And these are my buses. Right now, I just have one bus, which is a stereo bus, which means that whatever I do is gonna go to my left and right channels. I can add as many buses I want here. For example, if you were working in Dolby Atmos and simultaneously you were working in 5.1 and in Ambisonics and in stereo, you can add all these buses here. And afterwards, you can select which bus you want to monitor from. So I'm going to leave my stereo bus untouched, and I'm just going to name it stereo out. And I'm going to create a new bus, which is going to be a 5th order Ambisonics bus. And I'm just going to rename it Ambix out. And I'm just going to change the color of these buses so that I know that these are master buses. So let's just make them violet, for example. And as I told you before, you can create as many buses as you want here. And then you press OK. And you can see that now you have your stereo out and your Ambix out. Let me just, again, enable the Ambisonics metering, which for some reason DaVinci disabled. Okay. So I have my stereo output and my Ambisonics output. And now to monitor your Ambisonics signal, all you have to do is select your monitor device from this drop-down menu and go into Ambix out, which is the bus we just created. And you can see that DaVinci Resolve will automatically decode this signal to 2.0. You can click here and select whatever layout you want to decode to. In my case, I'm going to select binaural so that you can hear in YouTube. So right now, by selecting Ambix out, I am listening to my Ambisonic signal. And if I wanted to listen to the stereo signal, all I will have to do is to go back to stereo. And like that, you can go back and forth between different layouts that you are going to be monitoring. So now let's start to work. There are 4 different workflows you can approach when working with Ambisonics, and they depend on what kind of signal you are receiving and what type of workflow you are going to be following. Now, the type of signal that you are receiving, what you were given by your sound engineer or what you have recorded or whatever, can be non-ambisonic signal. If you have a non-ambisonic signal, meaning that you might have a mono, a stereo, or a whatever discrete channel like a quadraphonic, 5.1, whatever type of signal, it doesn't have to be Ambisonics. If you receive a non-ambisonic signal, you can either work with Ambisonics with sends or with inserts. And these are the 2 first workflows that we are going to explore. So let's start by dragging a file here. I'm just going to insert here a stereo file. Let me just expand this a bit. So as you can see, this is just a stereo file, and this file is going to my stereo out. So if I press play, you cannot hear anything because I haven't sent it to my Ambix out. To do that, all I have to do is just send my bus to Ambix out. And like that, my signal is going to both my outputs, and I can just select which one I want to monitor. I am right now monitoring my Ambix, and if I press play, you can hear that now you get your stereo signal, which is going to my Ambix output. Now, this signal is automatically being encoded by DaVinci at the very end of the chain in the panner, meaning that if you were to open the panner, you will be able to pan the signal somewhere around the listener's head. Let me just change the visualization to be spherical. And like that, you can pan your signal to different positions. And like that, you can pan your signal somewhere around your head, and you are listening to your Ambisonics output bus, which is going to binaural. If you had a 714 setup, all you will have to do is just to go to 714, and you will be able to hear to this, all these things going around you. So like that, you can use DaVinci Spanner to just move the signal around the listener in different ways. Let me just set this back to the way it was in the beginning. So there is one thing that you have to have in mind when working like this, and that is that whatever effect you insert in your channel, because your channel is in stereo, is going to work in stereo. The Ambisonics conversion happens at the very end of your track, meaning that the signal is being encoded to Ambisonic at the very end. So whatever you insert here is not going to work three-dimensionally, it's going to work in stereo. For using Sense, I'm going to create a new bus. Let me just create here a fifth order Ambisonics bus. And let's just name it Music 508, fifth order Ambisonics. And I'm going to set the color to orange so that I know that this is a send. And now I have created a new bus, which is my music bus. And I'm going to set this bus to go to my outputs. And now I can send my stereo track to this bus. Let's just do that. And you can see that now my track, not only is it going to my original outputs, but it's also going to my fifth order Ambisonics bus. And I'm going to disable the original outputs from my signal. Meaning that if I press play now, the signal is following this path. It's getting in as an stereo signal. You have a stereo channel, then it's going out to an Ambisonics bus. You have an Ambisonics channel, and then this Ambisonics bus is going to my final Ambisonics monitoring channel, or to my final stereo bus, or whatever bus you are using. And like this, I can insert in my Ambisonics track three-dimensional Ambisonics effects. So I'm going to do that. If I press play just like this, you can see that now my signal is going first to my music bus, and then it's going to my Ambisonics master. And still I am listening to my Ambisonics master. So let's just monitor this signal. DaVinci Resolve contains this meter that allows you to visualize the signal. So if I press play, you can see that now you can see how this signal is placed in your three-dimensional field. So if I were to rotate it, you can see that you can place this signal somewhere in your Ambisonics field, and we are always monitoring in binaural. So now that I have my Ambisonics bus, this means that whatever I insert in my Ambisonics bus is going to work in Ambisonics. Now, of course, the effect has to be written for Ambisonics. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to insert an effect here. Let's just insert, I don't know, let's just say that we insert a pitch shifter. And I'm going to set it before the visualizer so that we can visualize the signal after it has been processed. And like that, you can see that my input is set to Ambisonics and my output is set to Ambisonics. And this effect is now working in Ambisonics. If I press play on this, you can see that now I am transforming my signal three-dimensionally using Ambisonics plugins. Right now I'm using the AB pitch shifter, which is one of our plugins, and now I'm going to add a reverb. For example, let's add Vortex, which is our Ambisonics reverb. Let's just add it here. I'm just gonna put it after the pitch shifter, and I'm just gonna make sure that the input is in Ambisonics and the output is in Ambisonics again. And if I were to press play, so everything I do here is happening three-dimensionally in Ambisonics. So this signal that I am creating here, it's a sound field, which means that it is compatible not only with the binaural you're listening to right now, but I could set it to be 2.4, 5.1, 714, Dolby Atmos beds, or an object, or whatever I wanted. However, there is the second way you can approach this, and that is using inserts. So this way is very comfortable if you want to keep your original signal untouched and you just want to send it to an extra channel and do all your sound design there. However, it increases the steps, it increases the amount of channels, and sometimes you just want to add some reverb to a signal without having to create buses or stuff like that. Let's just go a couple of steps back and delete this bus that we created. Let me just close these things that don't exist anymore and enable this. Okay, so now I have my signal. Again, it's a stereo signal and it's going to both my stereo output and my Ambisonics output. I am monitoring my Ambisonics output. And as I had told you before, whatever insert you add here is going to work in stereo and not in Ambisonics because this is a stereo channel. Okay, so let's say that you want to work with inserts with three-dimensional effects. That means that you are gonna have to convert this signal to Ambisonics before it reaches the panner so that you can have space to add three-dimensional effects. And that is completely possible. All you have to do is convert this channel to Ambisonics. By clicking here, you convert it to fifth order Ambisonics. And you can see here that now you have all the channels and you have your signal here, which is in stereo. Now, the signal hasn't been converted to Ambisonics, it's still stereo. So if I press play, you are not going to be listening to a three-dimensional Ambisonic signal. You still have to convert it. And to do that, it's very easy. All you have to do is add an Ambisonics encoder. Let's just add AB encoder to the very first insert of your track. Once you do that, all you have to do is select the input to be stereo because that is the file that you are adding here. If it were a mono file, you would set it to mono or quadraphonic or whatever, so stereo. And you see that the encoder has already understood that this channel is a fifth order Ambisonics channel. And so if I press play now, you can see that your signal is now Ambisonics and you can pan it using the very same encoder. Okay, I personally believe that this is a little bit easier to pan here because you just have one panner and it just goes in the 3 dimensions. So now your signal is Ambisonics and all you have to do now is insert any effect you want after the encoder and that effect is going to work in Ambisonics. So whatever you insert after the encoder is going to work in Ambisonics. Let's just do the same example. Let's just add, I don't know, let's just add a delay. So I have just added our astrometry delay, which works in Ambisonics up to 7th order. And let's just set a preset here and make sure that it stays in Ambisonics, of course, because the signal is already Ambisonics. And if we press play, you can see that now you are getting three-dimensional, very weird delay that we have created in Ambisonics without having to create an additional bus. Everything in your same channel is very organized, very tidy. Let me just add the visualizer again. Let me just add the visualizer to the main output so that we can always have it present. Okay, so if I press play here again, let me just enable this again. And like that, your signal is working three-dimensionally. Let's just add another effect. For example, let's just add again vortex to add a little bit of reverb to this signal. I'm just gonna add it here. And again, make sure that your input and output are in Ambisonics because your signal is in Ambisonics. So if I enable this and press play again, and just like that, your signal, it was a very boring stereo signal, and now it is a very, very rich ambisonic signal that is going to be working not only in your binaural mix, but also in your three-dimensional mixes. Now let's explore the two other workflows that are possible, which is when you receive a signal that is already in Ambisonics. And that's what I'm going to do next. Let me just remove this track. So right now, because I'm going to add a first order Ambisonics file, I'm just going to create a first order Ambisonics track. So let's just create it and let's just add our file there. Okay, you can see that this is a first order Ambisonics file. It contains 4 channels, and now I'm going to send it to my Ambisonics output. So if I press play, okay, you can see that you have signal now. It is a first order ambisonic signal, but we talked about using the highest order the DAW allows you to use. And that is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to change this track to be 5th order ambisonics. And if I press play, you can see that there's still sound and it works perfectly fine. And that is because, as we said before, Ambisonics is an additive technology. So a 5th order Ambisonics signal contains the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st order signal. So it doesn't matter what order you add in your 5th order track, it's always going to work because it's going always to understand that there are orders present. And you might be wondering why creating a 5th order track for a 1st order channel. Well, there are 2 reasons. First of all, sometimes effects work in higher order. So even if you have a 1st order Ambisonics file, your effect might work in 5th, in 7th, or in whatever order Ambisonics, so you might want to take advantage of that. And second of all, upscaling. You can always upscale your signal to a higher order, and you are always gonna get better resolution. And that is exactly what I'm going to do here. My first insert always for my Ambisonics files, if they are a lower order, is going to be an upscaler. To me, that is a must, and I am going to add our AB upscaler. So as soon as I insert my upscaler in the very first effect here, I don't have to do anything. Input is Ambisonics, output is Ambisonics, and if I press play, my signal is already 5th order Ambisonics. It's being upscaled automatically by AB Imager Upscaler. And now I have a higher order Ambisonics signal on a file that was just first order Ambisonics. So let's just move on to the workflows we can approach here as inserts or as sends. Let's just start with sends. Just like in the example before, I'm going to go to Fairlight and I'm going to create a new bus. And I'm going to name it Music 50A. And I'm going to set it to be 5th order Ambisonics. And then I'm going to send my track to that bus, and I'm going to disable the other sends. And then the bus that I just created, I'm going to set it to go to my outputs. So by doing that, my original Ambisonic signal is going to a bus, and then that bus is going to my output. And if I press play, you can see that everything is working perfectly fine. And because I have my signal being sent to a bus, I can insert any ambisonic effect to that very bus, and my signal is going to be processed in 3 dimensions. So let's just add, for example, again, the pitch shifter. And as I add the pitch shifter, again, you can just do anything you want with your pitch. And so right now my signal is just going crazy in my bus, but in my original track, the signal is just very clean, but I am not listening to my original signal because I have disabled the output. I could enable them so that I can listen to both of my signals simultaneously, but this is how working with sends is. Now let's just say that we want to skip all the send part and we just want to add these effects to my original track, which is completely doable, which is working with inserts. Let's just go back one step. Remove this bus. And enable again my outputs. And now we are in the very first step, which is we are with our first order Ambisonics file is being upscaled to 5th order Ambisonics, and then it's going to our output. So if I press play, and now all I could do is just add any effect to our track, because our track is already in Ambisonics, the signal is already in Ambisonics, so any effect that I add to my track is going to work in Ambisonics. So I could again add our pitch shifter to our track. I'm just gonna add it after the upscaler, because the upscaler is converting the signal to 5th order Ambisonics. So if I were to just mess about with my signal, now let's just say that I want to add a delay just like I did before. Let's just add astrometry here, which is our Ambisonics delay, just to make things a bit more interesting. And I'm just going to make any preset, for example, this. And let's just make sure that the input and the output are set to Ambisonics. And this is the way you can work with DaVinci Resolve in Ambisonics as of version 19. It's very cool that Ambisonics is now supported All our effects are supported in DaVinci Resolve, so you can just go nuts in your three-dimensional sound design. And the only thing that I have to comment here is that there is no possibility to listen to another decoder. You always have to use DaVinci's decoder, which is not a bad thing because there is one less step for people who don't want to spend much time comparing decoders, but it could be nice if you were able to just use other types of decoders. But other than that, it works really, really well. You can create your three-dimensional sound fields, which are going to be compatible with Dolby Atmos, with stereo, with 5.1, or even with custom speaker arrays. We hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that I made things very understandable and easy for you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I will do my best to help you out. And that's it for my side. My name is Alejandro. We are the Audio Brewers, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.